Hi, everybody. My name is Linda Abraham. We're going to get started in just a minute. Please raise your hand if you can hear me. Okay, great. All right, let me just get something a little bit better. Wonderful. Okay, so we have people hearing me. That's great. And welcome all to this webinar. Okay, wonderful. Now, before we start, I have a little ritual I'd like to go through, and most of it involves you, as does indeed most of this webinar. So, involves your participation. So, I would like you to spend the next 60 seconds moving. I plan a participatory webinar, and I want you to be wide awake and ready to participate. So, move. You can jog in place, dance, do jumping jacks, push-ups, whatever you want, but move. Okay, you have about 45 seconds left. Keep moving. And while you're moving, the second thing I'm going to ask you to do is when you are finished with the moment of motion, I'd like you to tell your friends about today's webinar, as long as they're applying to MBA programs, especially if you know they have concerns about their stats. So Carly, my assistant, is going to provide the link where you can tell them to go to join us today. All right. And you have 3 seconds left. Keep moving. Carly, can you please provide the registration link? Okay, you can settle down, and in a minute, Carly will provide that link, and we're going to get started in just a minute. There it is. Actually, that's the worksheet. Oh, no, you provided both links. Okay, the worksheet link we'll get to in a minute. The registration link is the one that you can share with your friends who are applying to top MBA programs and perhaps concerned about their GRE or GMAT score. So again, my name is Linda Abraham. I'm the founder and president of Accepted. I'm going to be presenting the impact of your GMAT and GRE, a critical piece in your MBA application this morning. I've been an MBA admissions consultant since 1994. I've been quoted in Poets and Quants, Business Because, the US News, Business Week, and others regarding MBA admissions. I also was privileged to serve as the co-founder and first president of the Association of International Graduate Admissions Consultants. And I'm looking forward, most importantly, to sharing my 25 plus years of admissions experience with you today. Before we begin, I wanted to mention a few to-dos that will help you maximize your time here, and one that will help us improve these webinars. If you've not yet downloaded your webinar worksheet, please take a second to do so. You'll find, again, Carly just chatted you the worksheet link, and maybe you can do that again, Carly, for the worksheet. And my personal recommendation is that you actually print it out, use it to follow along, take notes, and kind of focus your attention. Keep yourself from getting distracted. I may ask a few questions during the presentation and request you to raise your hands in response. You can do so by clicking on the hand icon on your control panel. It's at the bottom of your control panel. And then, let's see. Last question, the one I have a window here that's hiding and I'm trying to find it. That's the issue that, oh, I see it now. Okay. All right. And then the next point is we're going to use the question window for your questions. So please post all your questions in the question windows. And we're going to use the chat window for your answers to my questions. Okay. If I ask an open-ended question in the course of the webinar, please respond in the chat window. Just a little bit easier for me if we keep them separate. Now, at the end, after you leave, you're going to receive a brief survey. Please fill it out. We value your feedback. And as a matter of fact, this webinar is a direct result of feedback that we received from webinar participants in the past. Now for the fun stuff. You can win. We're going to have a great contest towards the end of the webinar based solely on content presented during the webinar. So stay tuned, and again, avoid distraction, and you can win a free consultation with me. Now, I'd like to test your hand-raising skill. Please raise your hand if you want to go to business school to enhance your professional opportunities and/or pursue your dream career. Oh, great audience. Well, you're here for the right reasons, and you can raise your hands in Zoom. Okay, wonderful. That's good. I guess we're all getting used to Zoom and very experienced at it. Okay. Also raise your hands, please, if you're here because you're concerned that your GMAT or GRE score will prevent you from getting into your top choice schools and hamper or prevent you from pursuing that dream career. And raise your hands if you're concerned that your test score is going to prevent you from getting into business school and pursuing your dream career. All right. Just about half of you. Okay, thank you very much. And then here, and the last question. Well, actually, before I get to the question, you're not alone if you're concerned about your test score. Obviously, that's the topic of today's webinar. That score and your GPA are usually among applicants' biggest worries when they apply. And that's exactly what I'm going to address as we move forward with the presentation. I've left plenty of time for questions at the end, so if you have a question, just jot it down in the question window. I'll do my best to address it at the end. Before we start, I want to get a better sense of where you're at geographically and with the GMAT. So in the chat window, please, where are you logging in from? You could use city and state for, if you're in the United States, city and country if you're outside the United States. Okay, we got a couple of people from Brazil, Mexico, Israel, Seattle, Atlanta, Peru, India, Boston, Peru. Woo, got a really international audience. Pune, India, New York City, India. Anybody from Los Angeles? That's where I am. Jamaica, okay. Whoa, really international group. That's exciting. Amsterdam, so we have Europe, South America, North America, Asia, Dallas, Oakland, Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I don't think we have anybody from Australia here or from Africa. I don't see anybody here from those continents, but we really do have a very international crowd. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that information. And now we have our first poll. How many times, and this is about the GMAT first, we will get to the GRE. How many times have you taken the GMAT so far? Okay. The options are never, once, twice, and 3 times or more. Okay, never, once, twice, 3 times or more. And about over 60% of you have responded at this point. We can end the poll. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, great. And share the results. Here we go. It's 61% have never taken the GMAT so far. 22% have taken it once before. 4% have taken it twice. And 13% have taken it 3 or more times. Okay. All right. And about 2/3 of you again have taken the GMAT. So let's close this poll and go to the next one, which is how many times have you taken the GRE so far? And the options are never, once, twice, 3 times or more. This is interesting because we're getting more people taking the GRE than the GMAT. We're up over 100%. So I guess some of you have taken the test twice or just thought I was asking in general terms. All right, so 76% have never taken the GRE, all those taking the GMAT. That now it's making sense. 20% have taken it once, 0% have taken it twice, and 4% have taken it 3 or more times. Okay, great. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me share the results again. All right, so you can see that those numbers there. All right, wonderful. So most people have taken the GMAT than the GRE, which is pretty typical. And while this webinar rather, will refer to both tests, it will focus a little bit more on the GMAT. And the next poll, which I think is the last one for now, we'll have some more later, is which statement do you identify with most at the time? You took the GRE or GMAT and bombed it, and you're planning to retake. You took the GMAT GRE and are not sure if you should retake, and you're happy with your latest score. Okay. Let's see. About 35% having voted. Come on, we can do better than that. See, again, the options are you took the GMAT GRE and bombed it. You're planning to retake. Took the GMAT GRE and you're not sure if you should retake or not. or you're happy with your score. If you could just indicate which statement best reflects where you're at now. Well, obviously, if you never took it, you can't vote. So, all right, we're going to end the polling on this one and share the results. 40% took the GMAT and bombed it. They're planning to retake. 27% of those who have already taken the test are not sure if they should retake. And 33% are happy with their latest score. Fantastic. That's great news. Okay. Most of you are here because you took the GMAT and GRE and aren't happy with it on some level, or you fear that you won't be happy with it when you get your result, because several of you have not taken it yet. And I'd like to use this webinar to shed some light on the impact of the test score on the MBA admission, in the MBA admissions process, and also whether you should retake or not. Now, before we dive in, I'd like to ask you in the chat window, please, what are some myths about the GMAT and the GRE and the impact of the score? Okay, Tanvi, thank you. What are some myths about the test score and its role? In the chat window, please. Your exam score is everything, 100%. That's one of the biggest myths. A bad score can cause your app to be rejected. That actually, I think, is true. It's not necessarily true, but it can be true. A higher score automatically grants you an admission. You guys are reading my mind. You're 100% right. Those are probably the two most common myths about the GMAT or the GRE. The GMAT is preferred over the GRE. That's also a common myth. I hear you have to have a near perfect score with a bad GPA. It doesn't hurt you, but it's not true. Depends how bad the GPA is and what schools you're applying to. But okay, let's move on here. Let's address some of those myths, because you were right on. Those are exactly the myths I want to address. The first myth is that the GMAT or the GRE is everything in MBA admissions. If you get a high score, you're guaranteed admission. This is certainly not true at top programs. They like high scores, no question about it. It will definitely enhance your chances, but it is not everything. And most top business schools almost like to brag that they rejected people with 780s and 800s, etc. So no, it's not going to guarantee you acceptance. The second myth is that since MBA admissions is holistic, I really don't need to worry about my GMAT since I have high grades and great experience. That's absolutely false. Again, MBA admissions is holistic, so they consider everything. But a really low score can mean rejection. So, you can't ignore it either. You can't say because everything else is strong, I don't have to worry about it. It's just not true. And the other one that somebody else here mentioned, which is 100% right. Again, I almost feel like you folks are plants here. Most schools secretly prefer the GMAT to the GRE. That's not true. Definitely not true. I think INSEAD is the only one of the top ranked schools that clearly has a preference for the GMAT over the GRE at this point. Otherwise, I've talked to many, many, many admissions directors, privately, publicly, and they all say they really don't care. They just want to see a score that indicates you can handle a graduate management degree, a demanding one at that. Let's deal with some facts. The test score is the one element that is almost constant among all applicants. Yes, I know you can take the GMAT or the GRE and now the EA at some schools, the executive assessment, but that still means there's a lot less variability than there is in grading systems. Schools have different grading systems. Teachers at specific schools grade differently. And I'm going to guess, I would posit, that even teachers at different times of the day in different moods will grade harder or easier, unless you're talking about a multiple choice kind of test. Academic quality can vary. So these test scores are far less subjectivity and variability than grades. Another point I want to make about these test scores is that they are not a measure of self-worth. So if you get a bad test score, you have a bad test score, it doesn't mean you're an incompetent individual at all. Let's go back to another fact about it. The GMAT is also used by applicants, admissions offices, and some rankings, most notably US News, as a measure of student quality or ability. Now, I'm not saying that's right, But in reality, that the GMAT has developed many uses other than its intended one, and it is also used as a proxy for quality. U.S. News, one of the most influential of U.S. rankings, includes this as a factor in its rankings, and it's 16.25% of U.S. News rankings. And the GRE also, by the way, they've factored in the GRE. So the correlation between U.S. News ranking and Business Week ranking is a little bit less. Now here, I did it wrong, but the reason it's going down is because the ranking, goes down. But you can see there's a strong correlation between U.S. News ranking and average GMAT scores. It's less obvious with other rankings, but it's still there. There's less data on the GRE in terms of correlation with rankings, but schools are using the GRE. They're also, U.S. News is using the GRE, and schools are using the GRE, and they're starting to post data about it. So that means that you can see if your GRE score is competitive at the schools you're aiming at. I think you're going to see more and more schools doing this. Now, is the test score the most important element in your application? I would answer yes, no, or maybe, which is very frustrating for you folks. It is always important. Don't underestimate it, but it's not the most important. It can keep you out, but at top schools, it will rarely get you in. There are again, among the top schools, they are very rarely going to admit somebody just because they have a high test score. It can keep you out. Somebody thought that was a myth. Unfortunately, it's not a myth. A low test score is one of the things that can keep you out. It could also be a significant factor in determining if you're awarded merit aid. And there's no question that it is an important element in the application. It's just not the only important element. Schools aren't lying when they say the process is holistic. Now, I have a few questions for you coming up. I'm going to give you, I want you to raise your hands. I'm going to tell you all three questions, and then we're going to go back and do the hand raising. So don't raise your hands yet. The three questions I'm going to ask are, how many of you think the quant score is all that really matters? How many of you think the verbal score is all that really matters? And how many of you think that the verbal and quant are both important? So I'm going to lower all hands, and we're going to go back to how many of you think the quant is all that really matters, the quant score on either the GRE or the GMAT is really all that matters. Okay. 1. How many of you think that the verbal is all that really matters? Okay. And how many of you think, let's put all hands down. How many of you think that both the verbal and quant are important? We have a great audience today. Right. Yeah. The overwhelming majority. I think the AWA matters. Okay. Very good, Anurad. Yes. The AWA does matter, particularly at Rotman. Other schools, not so much, but it does matter also. The truth is it all matters. They're not, but I think the verbal and quant are most important, more important than the IR and more important than the AWA. Schools want students who can both add and subtract and talk, who can calculate and communicate. So what are you going to do about the GMAT or the GRE if you have to take it? Well, if you haven't taken it yet, study your tail off to do the best you can on it. Many of you are studying for it now. You're preparing to take it for the first time or to retake it. Again, there's a strong correlation, and I don't think the data has changed in the last 5 years, between score and the amount of study. So really, really study and prepare. It's an element of your record that you can still influence through study. You can't change your undergraduate GPA. You can't change your resume to date. But the GMAT or the GRE, your test score, is something you can still influence. Now, most people benefit from a course, but they aren't mandatory. I've seen clients do well who do self-study, who do online courses. Some people, though, they really benefit from a traditional course, a structured online course, or one-on-one tutoring, either online or offline. I would think about what's going to work best for you. You can check with friends, the GMAT club, beat the GMAT to determine the best approach for you. But my main point here is don't take it on a lark. If you want to take a practice test, take a practice test through a test prep company, offline. There's no reason to spend the money on the real thing or go through the mental anguish of it. Prepare, take it seriously, and hopefully take it once. Now, if you go in, GMAC has a score cancel policy. And most of the advice that I'm giving here is geared towards fall applicants. If we're talking about either the online tests or people who are trying to apply now, some of what I'm going to say either needs to be modified or isn't applicable. Okay, so for example, the GMAT score cancel policy applies to the tests taken in their test centers. It does not apply, from what I can see, to their online test, the online GMAT. So let's deal with what's clear, which is the traditional GMAT score, and you can cancel it for free within 2 minutes after seeing your score. You can cancel it within 72 hours for a fee after you take the test, and you can reinstate a cancel score for up to 4 years and 11 months for a fee. The reason I didn't put the fee is because they've been raising their fees. Some people are going to see this later. So definitely check the fee, see what it is. It used to be $25 to cancel the GMAT within 72 hours and after those 2 minutes, and $50 to reinstate. The policies change and the prices change, so always check. The score cancel is not available for the online GMAT except for tech problems. Now you can take the GRE online test, and it also seems to have GRE score select option, but do confirm. And score select means that you can take the GRE multiple times and choose the score that's sent to the school. I can't take it unlimited times, but you can take it more than once. ETS has score select again, so you can choose which test to report. Check with ETS for the details. For GMAT, you should go into any of the traditional testing centers with a cancel score in mind, both for total and for the test components. And if you have any doubt, I would say cancel it, because you can always reinstate. Canceling gives you more flexibility than accepting the score. And you can even, let's say you get a 700 and you hope to raise your score to a 740, and it doesn't, and you take it once and it goes to 710, and you take it twice and it goes to back to 700. You may want to actually show those scores to show that you tried to raise it. You can actually reinstate more than one score, as long as it's a traditional GMAT and not the online GMAT. What should be your cancel score? If you accepted a score, should you now retake? Evaluate your score in context. And context means the schools you are applying to and the rest of your percentile, and the rest of your profile rather. The goal for, ideally, this is a goal, this is not a line in the sand, is that you want to be for top programs at the 80th percentile in each section of the GMAT or GRE. Again, it doesn't mean that if you're at 78th percentile or 75th percentile, or even 70th percentile, you can't get into a good business school, especially if you're applying now. But even if you're applying next year, when most people are anticipating an increase in application volume, this is a goal, not a must-have or an ironclad rule. Context counts. Now, I keep talking about context. What do I mean? Context is the schools you're applying to and you, the rest of your profile. The GMAT score is never looked at in a vacuum. That's why before I said yes, maybe, or no. It's examined in context. And context means the schools you're applying to, their test score range, their average test scores, and other elements of your application. But those are the two primary components of context. Let me give you some examples. Let's say you're looking at a different school and comparing to your score. What is the average test score at the school you're considering, and the percentile range that they provide? I actually don't like when schools give the entire range, because I frankly think that it gives a certain false sense of hope. I think the 80 or 90th to 10th to 20th percentile range are most useful, but they don't, they do what they do. They don't necessarily ask me. What is the average and what is that range? Almost all schools post GMAT data, and more are posting GRE numbers. And you have to look at those numbers and compare your numbers to those numbers for the test score as well as the GPA. And then and looking at you, are you from an overrepresented group that usually does well on standardized tests, or the opposite? What does your transcript say about your academic ability? What does your work experience say about your quantitative skills and your communications ability? The answer to those questions determine the context. Now, let's go deeper into this question of context, and I'd like you to put on your admissions consultant hat. We're going to go through a few case studies of hypothetical applicants. These are people that I made up. They're not real. So please meet Joe. Joe is applying to several programs with an average GMAT score of 660 to 680. His score is 680 and pretty balanced. His work experience is competitive, and his GPA is a 3.4 and in line with the average GPA at his target programs. Should he retake? And Carly's going to post a poll for this. Should Joe retake? There you go. Okay, yes, no. There's no maybe here. Should Joe retake? Yes or no? Okay, we're at 60%, 65%. Can we get it up? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, with 68% having voted. 48% said Joe should retake, 52% said no. That's a pretty even split. I would recommend that Joe not retake. He is competitive at his target schools. Unless he's very confident that he can improve it or is aiming for a scholarship, in which case a higher score would enhance his profile, I would just say leave it be. Okay, next case study. Let's look at Ajay. Ajay is from an overrepresented group. He's from South Asia. He came to the US as a teen. He went to a public Ivy and earned a 3.3 GPA. He has some leadership and community service, but nothing too spectacular. By profession, he's a programmer, and he's applying to an MBA program with an average GMAT of 710. His GMAT is 680, and his quant score was 65th percentile. Should he retake? Let's have that poll, please. Should Ajay retake? Oh, we have 71%. Can we get it to 80%? That's what I really like. We have an 80% vote. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Please close the poll. We're at 76%, so we got it up. 77% said Ajay should retake, and 23% said he should not. I'm firmly in the camp of saying he should, because his GMAT, his GPA are below the schools. They tend to work together to confirm that, to reinforce the idea that he's not a competitive applicant. There doesn't seem to be any tremendous diversity points in his profile. He has tons of competition. I would encourage him to retake. Okay, so when you're looking at this question of context and the question of whether you should retake or not, you have to look at the context, and does your score reinforce or contradict the evidence presented by your transcript in particular, and other elements of your profile, but particularly your transcript. If your grades are strong and your test score is high, great, you're done. Put a check box next to the standardized test, whether it's the GMAT, the GRE, or the executive assessment. If your grades are below average and your score is above average, then maybe you are really a quite gifted student, but you just had a tough time in college. What's the context? Were you working to support yourself, your family? Did you get sick at one point and have a dip in grades? Did you perhaps start with the wrong major? Maybe there were family issues. Maybe you were just immature in your freshman year. It happens all the time. Let the admissions committee know the context and provide evidence that you can really perform in an academic setting. See if you can demonstrate that you now know how to apply yourself academically by taking business-related courses and acing them. Still, you are finished with the test. If your grades are high and your score is below average for your target school, can you retake the test? The best way to address a low test score, be it the GMAT, the GRE, the EA, the ABC, or whatever test score we're talking about, is to do well the next time around. Most schools use the highest score, and of course, you can now cancel scores that don't represent your ability, as long as we're not talking about the online GMAT. If the highest score still doesn't represent you well, perhaps you can at least show that you tried to take it multiple times or raise it, or have raised it somewhat through effort and determination. I am not suggesting 8 or 10 or 20 retakes, which I don't even think you can do now. I also want you to think back on the examples I gave, the cases I gave. Note that two people with the identical score can get very different advice. Again, you have to evaluate your score in context. And the two critical elements of context are the schools you are applying to and the other elements of your profile. Now let's go back to playing admissions consultant and look at another case study, okay? Jane has a 3.5 GPA with an undergrad degree in communications from a good public university. She has worked in not-for-profit fundraising since college. She really wants to go to Haas, which has an average GMAT for accepted applicants of 725. The GMAT mid-range for Haas is 690 to 750, and the average GRE is 162 for the verbal, with a range of 157 to 167, and a 161 for quant, total score of 323. Now, getting back to Jane, her past activism shows she identifies with Haas's 4 principles, but she's going to struggle to show she's competitive. Jane earned a balanced 670 the first time around when she took the GMAT. She retook, and her verbal score went up, but her quant is still stuck around 65th percentile. And the overall is around 700 GMAT. That was her second score. So she had a 670 and a 700. She studied really hard, and her practice exams are all in the 720 to 740 range. The second time she took the exam, she was developing a migraine during the quant section. Should Jane retake? And can we have that poll? Okay, again, the options are she should retake, she shouldn't retake, yes, no, and we're at 64% having voted. Can we get it up? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's end the poll, and the results are 52% say Jane should retake, 48% say no. Okay, in this case, I'm with the people who think that she should retake. She really needs a higher GMAT score to show she can handle the quant, especially the quant section, because she didn't take any quant as an undergrad. Her GPA is a little low for Haas. She needs to, and her current score I don't think would give them that confidence, especially since it's combined with a non-quant undergrad. Plus, and here's the big thing, she was doing really well and consistently well on those practice tests. And she was not feeling well when she was taking the quant section of the test. So I would have encouraged her to take it a third time. In general, you want to avoid applying to a program like Haas with a below average GPA and GMAT because it's just so competitive. Haas had a 15.4% acceptance rate for 2019's entering class per US News, which means that it rejected 85% of applicants, and it rejects roughly 7 out of 8 applicants. Those are pretty tough odds, and you want to be as competitive as possible. And again, she had reason to believe she could do better. So I would have encouraged her to take again. Now, for those of you who have taken it, whether it's a GMAT or GRE, 2 times before, and you're wondering whether you should take it a third time, if you think you can raise it, I would encourage you to do so. I'm going to tell you a little story. A close family friend's son was applying to MBA programs last year. He contacted me very early and asked if he could discuss MBA admissions with me. And I said, of course, be happy to. I've known him since he was born. I remember when his parents brought him home from the hospital. And happy to talk to him. It turned out that he'd taken the GRE and hadn't gone the way he wanted, and he was preparing for a second GRE. Fine. And one day I'm standing in a ridiculous line in an airport, very frustrated, and I get a call on my cell phone, and he'd just taken the second time, and again, he didn't get the score he wanted to, and he was really wondering if he should go for it a third time. And he had reasons. He felt he'd messed up his timing, he'd made some mistakes. He felt that he could raise it if he took it. I said, then I would encourage you to raise it because I think it's going to make a big difference. He said, well, I have relationships. I'm not sure how my relationships will deal with my focusing on studying and et cetera, for this exam. And I said, I'm not giving relationship advice here. I'm giving admissions advice. You're going to have to handle the relationships. Okay. So he took the exam the third time. Third time was a charm. He got the score he wanted. And he was visiting in Los Angeles, which is where I live. And he said, can I swing by and pick your brains a little bit about MBA admissions and get some advice from you? I said, sure. So he said he'd stop by the house, and I think we invited him for dinner. And we didn't invite him for dinner, and he was with his girlfriend. And I then, just having nothing to do with him, I talked to his mom the night before he was coming. And she says, oh, by the way, he's engaged. I said, he's engaged? He's coming for dinner tomorrow night. And I said, well, he's still engaged. So we had a mini engagement party for him that night and his then fiance. It was all very exciting. And I'm happy to say that he's now attending, happily married, an M7 school. So he got the girl, he took the test, he got the girl, and the story ended with a happy ending. But for you, did you retake the test twice or more? If the score didn't get where you wanted, is there other evidence you can do well despite the low GMAT? Do you have a demanding job? Was your college program rigorous and quantitative? Were there extenuating circumstances, in other words, changeable ones, that affected your score? For example, perhaps there was a jackhammer going outside the building, or you weren't feeling well that day, or you simply made some mistakes in timing in terms of while in the test center. Were you doing better on practice exams consistently? Could you change and improve your prep approach? Could you go from a course to tutoring perhaps? So that's some things for you to keep in mind. Now let's go to the next case study. This is the last one. I'm going to close this. May is struggling with the GMAT, especially the verbal portion. She has taken the test 3 times, preparing endlessly before each exam with different test prep approaches. Her scores have been 680, 700, and 670. She felt good physically each time she went to take the exam, and her practice scores have been in the mid to upper 600s. Once or twice, she got into low 700s. She's working as a financial analyst. She worked in China and currently in San Francisco. She attended the University of Michigan undergrad business school and earned a 3.4. She has little community service, but she was a violin virtuoso growing up and even played for a little bit in the university orchestra. She would like to attend Wharton, Booth, Columbia, NYU, or NYU Stern, all of which have average GMAT scores of 720 plus. Let's have the poll. Should May retake or not? Again, should May retake or not? We're at 67% having voted. Can we get it up over 70%? Okay. Anybody else have an opinion on whether she should retake or not? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's close the poll and share the results. Great. 65% said she should take and 35% said no. Okay, well, in this case, I think most of the time we've been in agreement. I would say she should not retake. If you've taken the test 3 to 5 times and your scores are still below where you want them, but in basically the same range, and there are no extenuating circumstances, and your practice scores were also in this range, then I would suggest that you simply accept that this is your score and apply appropriately. You may need to rethink some target programs to improve the chances that you will be accepted somewhere. And this is especially true if you're from an overrepresented group or if your grades were low. Don't throw out all your dream schools, but apply mostly to schools where you are competitive. I mean, again, if you want to try, so in May's case, you wanted to go to Wharton, Booth, Columbia, and NYU Stern, she should try 1 or 2 of those and then apply mostly to schools where she's competitive with her 700 GMAT score and her grades. Right now, she's from an overrepresented group with slightly below numbers, and that's a tough place to be. And nothing truly exceptional in her experience. If your grades are high, you can point to a strong grades, rigorous coursework, and demanding work experience to counteract test scores. Obviously do so, but it is tough to overcome. So congratulations on your good work as admissions consultant. I'd like to now have our contest. Here is the first question. What is one of three, I'm just asking for one, key facts or elements that makes the test score an important part of any MBA application? The first two to get it right will win the free consultation. First two to get it right will get the free consultation. What is one of the key facts or elements that makes the test score an important part of any MBA application? In the chat window, please. Okay, Benjamin, correlation to success in school, and Eason, it's standardized. Okay, so you are the two winners, Benjamin and Eason. Carly, do you have that? Let me just make a note. Congratulations, Benjamin and Eason. That's great. Okay, so let's go through the three facts, all three, though you got two of them. It is a constant, right? Much more of a consistent means of comparing you than grades or work experience or anything else. In general, it's considered a measure of student quality when computed in schools' averages. The other thing that makes it important for you at this point in time is that you can easily, or relatively easily, retake and raise it. You can't do that with your GRE or your work experience to date. The test plays several roles in addition to serving as a way to determine your aptitude for graduate business study or graduate management education. In that role, in those, other than that role, it can keep you out, but it can rarely get you in. It is a factor in determining merit aid, and it can play a role in screening for plum positions in management consulting and investment banking. Now, what are the implications of these three functions, these three factors for applicants? Number one, you want to prepare to do the best you can the first time or the next time you take it. Thank you, Carly. If you don't get the score you want and think you can improve it, it almost always pays to prepare again and retake, especially if you've only taken it once or twice. That may mean you need to apply to a later deadline. And remember that the overwhelming majority of schools take your highest score, but you're better off applying later with a competitive score and stronger application than earlier with a non-competitive score. At some point, if you can't raise your score, you will need to adjust your school choices. Unless your school expresses a preference for the GMAT, take the test you're going to do best on. So if you feel that GRE is your stronger, you're going to come out better, your percentile score is going to be higher, your overall score is going to be more competitive, take the GRE. If you feel the GMAT is a better test for you, take the GMAT. Take the one you're going to do better on. What are some of the pros of the GMAT? The GMAT, as I mentioned, is preferred by some investment banks when they're screening potential hirees. You can cancel and reinstate. And high scores tend to give schools more bragging rights. That differential is, I think, decreasing over time, but still is true. The advantage of the GRE, it's the only score, you can report only the score if you're choosing. You have the ability while taking the test to go back and change answers. It's less expensive. The GMAT online is supposed to be an easier exam for test takers than the GMAT online because they allow you to use scratch paper, clean scratch paper. And you can take, but again, the bottom line here is take and use the test you're going to do better on. Now, we're going to head into the Q&A in a minute or two. And at this point in the chat window, I'd like you to share with me what was the most valuable concept, idea, or piece of advice you heard so far in today's webinar. In the chat window, please. About candidate profiles. Good. Thank you, Mahtab. Anybody else? What was the most valuable piece of valuable concept, idea, insight, or piece of advice you heard so far in today's webinar. Reinstating your GMAT score. Good. Context is king. Great. Take the test you're going to do better on. Concept of context. Good. I'm glad. That scores can only get you through the door. They can get you to the door, not through the door. That's my point. Thank you, Brianna. Context is king. Good. That's a very important concept. I'm glad that you folks are taking that away from this. Now, some of you probably now have clarity as to whether you should retake the GMAT or GRE or not. Some of you are probably wondering how to apply to your situation the principles and examples I've provided. And all of you are wondering, thank you, all of you are wondering how to proceed and submit your best application, an application that spotlights your strengths and fit with your target schools while showing you as a standout in the applicant pool. Accomplishing all the above, whether you retake your test and get the score you want or continue to struggle with a low score, be it the GMAT or the GRE or the EA or whatever it is difficult. It's stressful and it's time consuming. And as we agreed at the beginning of the webinar, this process isn't about getting into business school or even about earning an MBA. We're talking about enhancing your professional future and maximizing your career opportunities. You're now at a crossroads on your professional journey. As you start your pursuit of the MBA, you can either take it a do-it-yourself approach or a professional approach. Given that we're talking about your career, lifelong earnings, and job satisfaction, I highly recommend the professional approach and engagement with an accepted consultant. We'd like to help you apply confidently and successfully. While you want to do this exactly once, or once more if you're a reapplicant, we've been helping MBA applicants get accepted for 25 years. We'd love to help you not only get accepted, but get into a program that launches you on your dream career trajectory. Put simply, it pays to have an experienced professional guiding you in this critical process. Here's what you can do when you work with Accepted. Access expertise and experience, reduce your stress, save time, optimize your application, and learn how to mitigate weaknesses, like a low test score. Candor, a mentor, and objectivity combined with expertise and decades of experience in MBA admissions. Now, some may say Accepted is expensive, and we're definitely not a cheap service because of the quality of our staff, which consists of highly experienced consultants, former admissions committee members, sometimes admissions directors, people who've served on GMAC committees. So you can't, those people need to get paid just given their experience. And there are also expensive risks associated with not using Accepted. And those are sometimes underestimated or discounted. Reapplication can easily cost a few $1,000s, especially if you have to retake a test score and get tutoring for it. One additional year of pre-MBA earnings can cost in the 5 figures in dollars. And there's a potential that you could have gotten to a better program with lifelong higher earnings and a better network. And that, again, could cost you big time. I'll let you calculate that. Every year, we work with applicants who talked to us a year earlier and decided after taking the do-it-yourself approach and getting rejected to work with us. They would have been better off working with us initially. And frankly, so would you. But enough from me. What do accepted clients say? I'm just going to read parts of these testimonials. This is just a fraction. You can find many more on the site. With an extremely low GMAT, below average GPA, and degree from a low-ranked university, I am extremely blessed to be attending a top business school. My admission would not have happened without your guidance. I hired you as a consultant in January, not knowing that you also turn out to be a doctor and an angel. Accepted to Duke. Or the second one, I just wanted to give you the good news that I got into Stanford as well. I am now going to have a tough time deciding between Harvard and Stanford, but at least it's a nice problem to have. So for now, here's what I'd like you to do. Go to accepted.com/MBA Answers. We're here to guide you and help you get accepted to the best program for you. Get your really important questions answered, whether it's about context, your profile, or whatever. Choose the service that's right for you, get the guidance you need, and then apply confidently and successfully. And now I'm happy to take your questions. So let's see what we have here. Okay. So we have an anonymous attendee who writes, can you give a basic guideline for how to offset a lower GPA? For example, if your GPA is a 3.5 for a target school with a 3.7 average, then by how many points would you try to beat the GMAT? Okay, that's the kind of question that I really can't answer without knowing much more about you. My advice always when you go into these tests is just go in and do the best you can. And then when you get the score, deal with the results. So if you ask me what score you should aim for, I would say aim for an 800. And if you ask me what score is competitive, I'd need to know more about you. Again, that is where a 1-hour consultation can really, really pay off big time. You're going to spend $150, $175 per application when you apply. If you're applying to programs where you're not competitive, then you're throwing out your money. If you could apply, and we've many times gotten feedback from applicants who were basically selling themselves short because of some perceived weakness in their application. And as a result of advice they got from us, they applied to higher ranked programs that they ultimately got into. They were the payoff was enormous. But thank you for the question. Okay. All right. I'm getting a lot of questions. I have this and that, and am I competitive? It's really hard to answer. I realize I would do that in the case studies. All right, so I'm going to do my best, but let's see what we have here. Okay, so Matab asks, and if it's okay, we can maybe have a little bit of dialogue. Matab, if it's okay with you, I'm going to unmute you. If it's not okay, just keep yourself muted. Okay, so you are now allowed to talk. No, you are muted. Okay, nope, you want to stay muted. Okay, no problem. He writes, I have a 720 GMAT, Indian male engineer profile. Do you feel this is sufficient for INSEAD and LBS? Okay, so if you have competitive work experience, if you have competitive grades, if you, from a good school, if you also can show leadership, and for INSEAD and LBS, it's particularly important to be able to show a global mindset, multicultural fluency. That's all really important. If you have all those things, then yes, your 720 GMAT, and it's balanced, assuming it's balanced, is competitive for INSEAD and London Business School.
Hi,
okay?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
Good as well. And hello to everyone here.
Yes, I do hear you. Do you hear me?
Yes, I do. I do.
Okay.
Yeah. You wanted to have a dialogue?
Well, I think I basically answered your question without the dialogue. Did you understand my response?
Yes, I did. I did.
Okay. So
so can I add one angle to that? So I'm actually working in Saudi Arabia with an oil field company.
Yes.
And I'm probably going to be laid off next week. So how would that impact my application if I say apply this fall?
Okay, I think that's a very good question, a very timely question. Thank you for raising it. Unfortunately, I'm sorry to hear that. I mean, the schools are not going to look poorly upon you if you're working for a Saudi oil company and get laid off in the current economic environment. Okay, that's not going to be a big deal. What's you need to do, what's going to be important is are you able to find another job quickly? If you're not, because I realize it's a very tough employment market out there, again, the question is going to become, how are you using your time? Obviously, part of the time is going to be spent looking for another job, perhaps relocating.
Yes.
The other part of your time, though, could be spent taking some business classes, improving your skills. It could be used volunteering. It could be used to set up some kind of online service that helps a particular population that's struggling. There's all kinds of ways you can use this time. And that's what they're going to be looking at. Okay, does that help?
It does. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, I'm going to mute you. And let's see, we have other questions coming in. Okay, now Brenda has a very interesting question here. The question is, any tips for applicants who were rejected from M7 schools solely based on a low GMAT score due to a rushed application? All right. Again, Brenda, if it's okay with you, I'm going to unmute you. If you don't want to be unmuted, then you can just, keep yourself muted. Okay, no problem. Now, I'm saying this is very interesting because the rushed application could also have been could also have contributed to the rejection. Obviously, I don't know your GPA. I don't know how low the GRE score was, and I don't know, which schools rejected you. But I think it would be somewhat risky to assume that you were rejected solely because of a GRE, because you also say your application was rushed. Perhaps your answers weren't as thoughtful or as polished as they should have been. So the tips would be, first of all, retake the GRE and get a higher score. And don't assume that your application otherwise was just fine. Did you apply? You can chat me your answer if you want, or you can, again, speak it if you want to. You didn't apply, did you apply round 1 or 1-2 last year, or round 3? If you could just chat me the answer to that, that would be helpful. No, not coming. Okay. I was going to say, if you applied by rush, I meant that I applied despite the lower GRE score. Not everything else was rushed. Okay, so the GRE was scored. Then the main thing would be and you assume your GPA was competitive? And then the best thing for you to do is to retake it. You now have time, presumably, to prepare for it, and hopefully really, really improve it. If you took a course, then consider taking a tutor. Try doing some of the things that I mentioned in the recording. Up your prep strategy so that you improve the score. Okay. Let's see what else we have here. You're most welcome. Thank you very much for your feedback, Brenda. Okay, we have somebody asking, hi, Linda, do you only provide consultations to MBA applicants? How about applicants to PhD programs? I asked because some Ivy League schools require GMAT or GRE scores. Yes, we do assist with PhD applicants. We'd be delighted to help you too. So thank you for the question. Okay, I see. All right, thank you again, Brenda. Let's see, got a lot of questions. Do you think, this is from Alak Bar, and I'm going to unmute you if you want. If you don't want, you can stay muted. Do you think that okay. Do you think that community service at hospital during COVID-19 would strengthen an application considering the fact that applicant is near to competitive stats? Yes. Yes, obviously it depends a little bit on what you actually did, but the fact that you started volunteering is going to be is admirable. So I think it will strengthen your application. How much?
Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. How much would depend on how weak, let's say, your community service was, et cetera. You might have lots of activities, in which case this will marginally help. If you had very little, then this shows initiative and caring and service and all that, and it's very good. So thank you for doing so, and good luck with your application.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Okay. Let's see. Okay, here's from an anonymous attendee. GMAT 740, Quant 48, Verbal 44, healthcare entrepreneur got rejected from INSEAD previously. Is Quant score the main culprit? I don't think so. I would have to see your application. A Quant of 48 is not a bad Quant score at all. Yes, your verbal is higher, but you can't assume that that Quant score is the main thing. I would be very, I don't think that's the main culprit at all. I'd have to see the application, and I would strongly encourage you to consider a rejection review. Carly, can you put the link for a rejection review in the chat window for all participants? Okay. Okay, here's an interesting question. It's from an anonymous attendee. Hi, Linda. I was looking to apply this year with 3 years of experience. Parents have convinced me to start a weekend 1-year master's program in engineering management. Would you advise applying next year instead? I don't understand what the choice is here. Are you talking about applying next year to the MBA program? Well, I guess, okay, I can't answer this one right now. Very good question from an anonymous attendee. I'm going to take this. If the online GMAT is recognized as more complicated, that's a good way to put it, than the on-site version, do schools take that into account when reviewing the application? I've been talking to admissions directors, and they quite clearly did. They indicated that they would take that into account. I personally, yeah, I've been encouraging people who want to take the online tests now because they want to apply to these extended admissions rounds to look more closely at the online GRE. But if you want to take the online GMAT, schools have indicated they know that it's more complicated, as you say. Interesting question. Do you have, also from an anonymous attendee, do you have any advice on how one can figure out a method of prep that might work best for you? I would just think about, some practicalities. If the main options are online, offline, courses, or individual. So are you going to do really well in a course? Do you need the structure? And well, I guess right now there's no offline courses, period. So you have to do it online, right? So let's forget that one, that option. The main thing is, do you want a course where it's structured and there's a framework and you go through it? Or do you want to work one-on-one with a tutor who's going to give you exactly what you need, but you're probably going to pay for it? You're going to pay more money for it. Time, money trade-off is not uncommon. And I think that's really what you have to do. And again, at the moment, for now, the online versus offline choice really isn't around. At a time, hopefully soon, when we start to have that choice, then I think you also have to look at your schedule and what's going to work for you. Do you have to commute to the course? Do you have the time to commute to the course? Is it easy or difficult? Do you live in a city like I do with horrendous traffic? Or do you live in a city with relatively easy traffic where it's not a big deal to either walk to your test center, to your test prep center, or take a public transportation, bike, or take your car? Those are the kinds of questions. Do you work crazy hours and have very little flexibility in your schedule? That would indicate online and individualized tutoring might work better. If you have a fairly set schedule and really like a classroom setting, then you might work better, assuming you have that option, to be in class. Let's see. So that would be my advice on that one. Okay, Vidit asked an interesting question. If the average GMAT score, not GRE, goes into school ranking methodology, wouldn't that inherently bias schools to higher GMATs and high GREs? Yes, but it's been several years now that rankings have been considering both the GRE and the GMAT. I think when the GRE first started being accepted, your statement was true. I don't think it's really true anymore, or to a much less extent. Victor Yang asks, Victor, do you anticipate this fall's application cycle to be more competitive than other years given the impact of COVID? Also, I'm 30 years old. So I'm not sure if I'm too old for a full-time MBA program. Yes, I do anticipate this fall's application cycle to be more competitive than the last few years, last 2 to 3 years, when there's been a dip in application volume. And I also anticipate that it will be higher because of the recession we are either in or going into. Typically, MBA application volume goes up in times of recession. So yes, I do anticipate that. Now, if you're 30 years old, you are not too old for a full-time MBA program. We do have, actually, Carly, can you post the article we have for older MBA applicants? It's on the blog. We'll post you a link to that. But 30 years old is not too old. The key question for MBA programs isn't so much your age, it's the amount of experience you have. The sweet spot is 3 to 8 years of experience. My guess is that you're at the upper end of that. You may want to focus a little bit more on programs with higher average levels of experience. And that's now in the chat window for you, Victor. But, you know, it's not, you're not too old. And some programs, you'd be right in there. So don't worry about it. Thank you again. Matab, again, I think I just answered your question. But I am expecting, I don't know if it's going to be a huge spike or a spike, but I am expecting a spike, an increase in applications in the 2020-2021 application cycle, which is next year. Okay. Okay, anonymous attendee is asking, it's not out of scope. Could you explain what is included exactly in rejection review service? Is it okay, so the rejection review, again, you can look at the exact description, because Carly, would you mind posting that URL one more time? It's in the chat window. Rejection review is when one of our consultants takes your application, reviews it, and provides, the goods and the bads of the essays, letters, and overall applicant profile. So the question is, how competitive are you, just the raw facts, and how well did you present your qualifications, along with suggestions for improvement. It's not an edit, okay? It's not a full-blown edit, but it will give you direction going forward. And you don't want to repeat the mistakes. If you made mistakes last time around, mistakes could have been applying to programs where you weren't competitive. It could have been not presenting yourself effectively. Okay, so rewriting my question. This is from the attendee who was asking about the one-year master's program. So as I understand it, you are currently in the one-year master's program, and would I advise you to apply for the MBA next year because I still want to do that? Instead, I don't think you have to give up the master's, the engineering management program, unless you don't really like the course and don't want to be, an engineering manager. The programs are different. The engineering management program is going to be much more technical. And we actually had, maybe Carly, you can post that. I don't know if this is a program. I interviewed the head of the engineering management program at Cornell, and he directly addressed the difference between the MBA and the engineering management program. It was a podcast. So if you could, Carly, if you could post that link too, this anonymous attendee might benefit from it. I do think that if you are in the engineering management program, you will have to address why you want an MBA in addition to that, since that is a management program. And it's just, your decision. What do you want to do with both these degrees? Why do you need both these degrees? So I don't have enough information here to really answer your questions, but I would really think about what you want to do, and do you need both these degrees? And thank you, Carly. She just posted the link to our interview with Cornell's director of the Masters in Engineering Management. Schools, Caitlin's asking, schools don't really care when you take the GMAT and GRE as long as it's valid. It's valid for 5 years. One anonymous attendee is asking, would you recommend that international applicants wait for the U.S. election results and apply round 2? No, I do not. I would recommend that you apply as soon as possible because, or round 1, because if you are accepted, you will need that time to get a visa. You don't want to get caught in some kind of visa mess, which is what most applicants are in right now. You want to start that rolling as soon as possible. Also, I would expect, and this is where my crystal ball is cloudier even than usual, that you're going to see an increase in applications even greater round 2 than round 1, because I don't think the economy is going to recover that quickly. So I would get your application in round 1 if you're ready. Okay, can a higher GPA in a graduate program help a candidate with a low undergrad GPA? The answer is yes. Okay, with that, I answered most of your questions. I know I haven't gotten to all of them. I'm sorry for that. I want to close. I want to thank you for your time, your attention, your questions, your answers, your participation. You've been a great audience. I have one final story, one final thought, and one question from me to you. I hope that this will take just a few minutes. The thought: the GMAT or the GRE are an important element in your application. Not the only important element, but definitely up there. There are also the essays, your resume, possibly a video, short answer questions, optional essays, and of course the interview, which could be individual, online, or it could be a team-based discussion, a group interview. All these elements, the ones coming up, are in your control. Make them the best they can be with our help. Now the story. An applicant came to us with a GMAT 40 to 50 points below the GMAT average for his target elite MBA programs. He was stressed and not sure he should even try. Here's what he wrote after his acceptances. Just to jog your mind, you helped me apply to 7 schools in the US, including Haas, Kellogg, and Fuqua. I was invited to interview with every school that I applied to, despite my low GMAT of only 660. Now the results have started coming out, and so far, I've been admitted to Tuck and Fuqua. There's no way I would have been successful without your invaluable edits and mock interviews. I owe this success to you, Jennifer. Oh, and by the way, the resume you did for me has earned me an interview with McKinsey. And he was later accepted to Haas with a large scholarship and Ross, so he was admitted to 5 out of 7 schools. Now, this applicant is was someone just like you, but he accessed the guidance he needed to overcome his low GMAT score. Working with Accepted, he also brought out his strengths and distinctive qualities and ultimately showed that he belongs at a top MBA program. He got into 5 great MBA programs with Accepted's help. So can you get accepted. So that was the thought, the story, and now the question. You've listened to the entire webinar. You listened to the Q&A, listened to the pitch. You're clearly interested in what I have to say. So please help me out here. I'm curious. Why are you sitting on the fence about engaging with us and accessing the one-on-one insight and expertise that can really take your application to the next level? If you can answer that question in the chat window, I'd really appreciate it. And if you prefer the question window, I'll try and follow both. The chat one's a little easier, okay? Why are you sitting on the fence? Why are you hesitating to engage with us? I prefer to take the GMAT first and engage with a consultant after I have a score. Okay, that's actually a pretty good reason. That makes a certain amount of sense. That's a good reason, Tanvi. Sometimes people engage with us first because they may have questions about extracurricular activities, other things that go into the application. Some of the questions that I answered here, for example, but that would be one very good word. Yes, Brandy, we are working with round 3 applicants, even those due, let's say, around June 1. Today is May 6th. There is time. So yes, we are working with people who are applying even for May 29th and June 1st deadlines. You want to gather all your materials to make a potential meeting more productive. Excellent. Great. And I think you actually won an initial consultation with me, so that's great. You're very welcome, Brandy. Okay, so Mahtab wrote mainly cost, planning to apply to at least 7 schools. All right, well, we have, you know, again, as I showed in the earlier slide, minimum investment is $330, which isn't peanuts, I realize. But again, that's a lot less than the cost of 2 of the applications you're planning to apply to, Mahtab. In addition, you can get discounts by buying more than 1 hour at a time. If you buy 5 hours, that rate goes down to $310. If you buy 10 hours, it goes down to $295. So you can bring the cost down, and the benefits can far outweigh the cost. So I'm not diminishing the fact that we are not a cheap service. I said it before, I'll say it again. But if you, especially if you go on our hourly plans, that cost can be mitigated. And you can also control very much what you use us for. The other option is flat rate services. Carly, can you post a link to the hourly fee services, please? The other way to go is to get a flat rate package where those are more expensive, but you're not counting minutes, you're not counting, those are probably the cheapest on a per hour rate, but they're more comprehensive, and in terms of total outlay, a little bit more expensive. Okay, so let's see, for some applicants, the price might be out of their comfort zone, right? Not a lot of people understand what is the real value offered by consulting services. Right. Thank you very much, Brenda, for that. Again, you're going to be paying the application fees, including the internationals. You're also going to ultimately pay tuition. And the logic behind this entire investment is that the rewards are going to exceed the cost. So if we can enhance your chances of acceptance at better schools with higher lifetime earnings, there is, to be sure, a payoff there. I also want to point out that any of you who are interested in engaging with us on a paid basis can get a free consultation if you just go to the website, and you can kind of try us out and see if the value is really truly there. In addition, you can start out with a 1 hour purchase and trade up. Plus, we have a very generous refund policy in the event that you aren't happy. That's in our terms of service. You can look it up after the paragraph 7 in our terms of service. You can look it up after the webinar, or Carly, maybe you can post the link to our terms of service, so that's there. But this ability to start with actually no investment, the free consultation, then try 1 hour, and then upgrade to any service that we provide, practically almost any service we provide, not all of them. But you know, from 1 hour to a 5 or 10 hour plan, or 1 hour to an application package, really allows you to test out the service and see if it does provide value to you. Okay, now in terms of your second point, Brenda, which is excellent, not a lot of people understand what is the real value offered by consulting services. Now, again, I think the real value is threefold. One is expertise. We're talking about people who've been involved most frequently on both sides of the admissions desk, as either admissions committee members or worked in admissions offices and admissions consultants, in some cases for decades. I have a couple of consultants on staff who've been working with Accepted, and I'm not talking about myself, since 1998, others since 2008. You know, that kind of experience is not something most of you want to have, and you can't. And again, you have both the admissions consulting experience and, in many cases, admissions director experience. So there's expertise and experience on the staff. The other element I want to point out is simply dedication. If you look at the feedback we've gotten from clients, and Carly, can you post the MBA feedback page? You'll see that one of the things that over and over is just the dedication of the staff to you, and that dedication translates into really pushing you. We're objective about your writing. I'm not objective about my writing, I don't think you're objective about your writing. And writers need editors. There's professional writers all have editors. But I don't think you're professional writers. And I don't see why amateur writers shouldn't have editors also. So you have that kind of dedication, mentorship, and objective criticism, provided supportively, I might add. We don't tear you down at a point in time when you're vulnerable. We're providing constructive criticism can really, really, really improve your application. Again, if you go back to the, whoops, this went out of the, let's go back here. Ah, that's not right. Okay, let's see. I'm going to share my screen again. So somehow I managed to close it. All right, here we go. Okay. So there, you should be able to see it. No? Okay, here we go. There's no way I would have been successful without your invaluable edits and mock interviews. That's not my words, that's the client's words. If you look at the feedback page, you'll see it over and over again. No, I understand, Brenda. I appreciate your feedback. I think it's excellent. I'm not taking offense at all. And Brenda also wrote, only a consultant accepted has a network of AdCom members, former AdCom members, which can provide you with specific insight on your case. This is the real reason why we all would benefit from consulting. I had a consulting session with another company. Okay, fine. I hope you'll have one with us. All right. Anybody else? No, I didn't take any offense. I took it as a compliment. I just wanted to build on it. You're very welcome, Matab. Anybody else want to tell me why you're not engaging with us? Okay, in that case, I want to again thank you for your time and your attention. If you're interested in the free consultation and engaging with Accepted, please take advantage. I think, Carly, can you also share that link? And good luck with your applications. Thank you very much for coming.